Hey guys, before we start the video, I just wanted to say, if you're new here, welcome and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Now back to the video, a compilation of 4 zombie stories. You probably recall the whole Ebola scare years ago. It was on every news outlet, causing mass panic around the United States when news broke that someone was infected on a flight back to the US, causing a major lockdown of the airport and plane. It was a major sales growth for the people who sold cleaning products and medicine. As of now, there is still no cure for it. It can survive for several days on a dry surface and room temperature. To make things worse, it also is able to avoid our immune systems by infecting areas it cannot check. I was working with a special projects group that were collecting information from hospitals across the United States with the intention that they could map out those who were taking in high-risk patients in hopes that they could prevent any outbreaks that could potentially destroy the country in a matter of days. It sounds far-fetched, but they are still doing it to this day, and it has been working so far, with the exception of a recent outbreak in a small rural town in Arizona. For security reasons, I will not disclose the name of the town or the actual hospital. For now, I'll just refer to it as the Clemson Regional Hospital. The call came in around 5:30 in the morning. It was from the lead physician at the hospital, who I'll refer to as Dr. Williams. It was a young female that came in a few days ago. She was describing common flu signs and symptoms at the local clinic before she was sent to us. The doctor's voice sounded weak over the phone as he described the woman the special response team had picked up hours earlier after she tried to leave the town. "Doctor, how many more cases have came in since then?" I asked, trying to form a mental picture on how big this outbreak could potentially be. "The whole town," came his response. I sat in disbelief. "Are you sure?" I responded quickly. "Yes, all 400, including myself and the hospital staff." This was bad. If this outbreak had infected the whole town, there was no telling how far it could be now. I got up from my bed and ran into my office, quickly turning on my laptop. "Have you started quarantine procedures?" I asked, while trying to get a hold of one of my contacts in the CDC. "Yes, but there is no telling how many people have made contact with uninfected hosts." My contact sent a response email immediately. "Containment teams are already setting up a perimeter around the town. Media blackout is in effect. Signed, M." I closed my laptop and put the phone on speaker as I got dressed. "Doctor, you have to keep everyone in that hospital, no matter what happens. I'm on my way." M sent a helicopter to pick me up and transport me to the site. It landed on a temporary landing zone on the outskirts of the town. There were multiple military vehicles and men in hazmat gear setting up roadblocks and checkpoints on the main road leading into the town. A man wearing a respirator and combat gear greeted me as I stepped off of the helicopter. "I'm Sergeant Weston. My team and I will be escorting you to the hospital." He pointed me towards a tent next to a parked armor truck. "Your equipment is in that tent. Go get changed and we can head out." I thanked him and headed towards the tent. As I was making my way over, a shot rang out, causing me to jump. "Stop! If you come any closer, you will be shot," a voice yelled over a loudspeaker. I couldn't hear anyone in response. But after a few moments of silence, there was a rapid series of gunfire before things quieted down again. I didn't bother looking at what they were shooting at. It sounds cruel, but in my line of work, you have to remain detached, or you'd lose your sanity. The tent was occupied by 3 other people, presumably from the company, wearing Type A hazmat suits. In the far corner were the cases containing my equipment. I changed into a hazmat suit, thoroughly inspecting it, ensuring there were no leaks or cracks. Its internal oxygen system let out a low hiss as I pulled the respirator over my face. I made sure my Glock 19 was loaded and secured on my leg holster before I exited the tent. Sergeant Weston was waiting for me on the road in a gun-mounted truck with 3 other people. The truck was cramped even more thanks to the hazmat suit I was wearing. "Why exactly are we going to the hospital?" The soldier mounting the gun yelled down into the truck, his voice muffled by his gas mask. "To get the security footage and make contact with the head physician," I yelled back. The truck passed the roadblock on the road. There were 3 dead bodies lying in the road, 2 adults and 1 child. I could make out the blood seeping from their noses and eyes from inside the truck. "If they made it all the way out here, there's no telling how many more are out there trying to get out," I exclaimed as I leaned close to the sergeant. "Don't worry, we have Apaches circling the perimeter. So far, not a single person has made it out of the town yet," he reassured me. The town was dead silent, with the exception of barking dogs and the occasional gunshot. Cars were left in their places, and doors to houses were left open. It left me with an uneasy feeling in my gut. "Fox 1, this is Reaper 2. We have you on thermals." A voice came from the truck's radio. Weston reached over, grabbing the handpiece from its cradle. "Roger that, Reaper 2. Keep any locals off of us, and keep me posted. Out." He put the handpiece back. "What do you do if we need immediate fire support?" I asked, interested in the new connection. "The pilot will ask for an authentication phrase before engaging. Ours is wildfire. Why?" Weston asked, confused. "Just in case shit goes sideways," I replied. The driver stepped on the brakes, slowing us down to a crawl. "Contact 12 o'clock, he called out. "Roger, eyes on," the gunner responded, loading the gun with an audible sound. "Return to your home," he yelled at someone I couldn't see. "Fucking shoot him," the driver yelled. Thud, thud, thud. Casings from the machine gun fell into the floorboards, narrowly missing my legs. I could feel the vibration from the gun shooting in my chest. "What the fuck are you shooting at?" I yelled, trying to make sense of the situation. But I got no response. We passed what little remained of a body. "He popped like a fucking balloon." Laughter came from up top as we continued towards the hospital. A bright orange glow was shining across the night sky as the hospital grew near. "What's burning?" I asked Sergeant Weston, who was scanning the street. "One of the gunships shot a school bus trying to run the roadblock on the north side of town. They were not going to take any chances of this thing spreading, whatever it was." "We're here. Cortez, stay on the gun. Derek, Anderson, you're with me in the suit." Weston opened the door to the truck, quickly making his way to the front entrance. What remained in the hospital waiting area almost made me vomit in my hazmat suit. Bodies were still sitting in the seats along the wall. Blood was seeping from their eyes, ears, and nostrils. "Holy shit, this is metal." Derek, the driver, gasped at the grisly scene. "Where are we going?" Weston asked, facing me, the light from his rifle blinding me momentarily. "Good question. We need to get the footage from the security system, and I need to find Dr. Williams." He stood there for a moment, formulating a plan. "Alright, Derek, go find the main security office. Anderson, go with the suit and find the missing doctor. I'll hold down here to make sure he doesn't leave." I walked over to the reception desk to find the deceased nurse clutching onto a phone. It was letting out a dial tone as I grabbed her ID card. "What do you need that for?" Anderson asked, kicking at an empty stretcher. "This'll get us into different areas of the hospital non-staff members aren't allowed in." We made our way further into the hospital. More and more bodies lined the hallways as we got further and further. There was an intersection at the end of the hall where we found a lounge area for the hospital staff. "What caused this shit in the first place?" Anderson asked, trying to ease the tension. "I'm just here to find the doctor and get footage from the security cameras," was all I replied, as I checked the bodies to see if any were my missing doctor. "You know, Anderson's voice was cut off by a loud crash from behind us. Anderson spun around, raising his rifle. "Who's out there? Make yourself known," he yelled into the empty hallway. A few seconds later, a young female around 9 or 10 came walking around the corner towards us. "They're here to save us." Her voice was hoarse and raw. "I have to go tell Mom and Dad." She coughed, causing blood to dribble down her chin. "Where's your mom and dad?" I asked, keeping my distance. "In the picture room." The girl slowly proceeded down the hallway, ignoring us. The picture room turned out to be an X-ray room. The little girl's parents were in the waiting area, both of them in the same condition as the others. The little girl sat on her father's lap, trying to wake him from his never-ending sleep. We continued to search for Dr. Williams. After another hour or two of searching the ground floor, I entered an elevator and headed to the second floor with Anderson following close behind. "Anderson, tell the suit I found the security room." A voice came from Anderson's radio. "Will do. You find anything in there?" He responded, sounding bored. "Yeah, I was replaying the footage, and there's someone that looks like the suit who visited the hospital before people started dropping." Anderson looked over at me as I leveled my Glock 19 at his face, pulling the trigger. The sound was deafening in the confined space. A neat little hole was created on Anderson's cheek from where the round impacted. His gas mask visor was cracked from the round entering his head. I picked up his rifle and radio, stepping over his now dead body as I exited the elevator. Dr. Williams' office was on the second floor on the northeast side. He would have the only physical file on patient 0. I couldn't risk anyone else finding it. Given her state on the second arrival, there would be no time for her to be entered into the database, and the people on the payroll at the local clinic made sure to keep patient 0 out of it. One of the infected locals was still alive as I neared Dr. Williams' office. "Help me," he croaked as I walked closer. "No one is going to help you," I muttered as he reached out towards me with a shaking hand. Dr. Williams' office was clean and well kept. His deceased body was still sat at his desk, with phone still in hand. Picture of the smiling doctor with a wife and 2 kids sat on his desk. His computer was still on, and it looked like he was in the middle of sending an email when he passed. I rolled the chair back, dumping his body out onto the floor, taking a seat. "Helen, people are getting sick, and I don't know if I'll be able to make it home. Tell the kids I love them. Will." The cursor hovered over the send button. I grabbed the mouse and deleted the unsent email before getting back up. "Well, Will, thanks for holding on to this for me." I grabbed the file from his desk and walked back towards the elevator. I made sure to take a different elevator down the main floor to prevent the others from finding the body. "Where's Anderson, and why do you have his rifle?" Weston asked, worried. I lifted the rifle in response and fired off a burst into his chest and legs. He fell to the floor, sending his rifle clattering across the floor. You son bitch," he stammered as I stepped over his body. "What's going on in there?" Cortez's voice crackled over the radio. "Yeah, I heard gunshots. Is everything okay?" Derek's voice came next. The security room was to the south of the reception area, past the testing labs. Derek was still watching the security cameras when I entered the room. He was watching the last couple of days instead of the current feed. His rifle was rested against the desk, set under the large TV screens. "Boss?" His voice echoed in the radio, causing him to face me. "What the hell?" was all he was able to say before I put a round through his head. I looked through the feed and found a copy on the hard drive. I wiped it from the computer and the security's backup system before walking back out to the truck. "Yo, what the fuck is going on in there?" Cortez asked as I exited the lobby. "I need your help. Hurry!" I tried my best to sound distraught. I followed Cortez into the lobby. "Who the fuck shot him?" he asked, bewildered. I did. I fired the rest of the magazine into his back before it emptied. The rounds raked his legs and back, sending him to the floor. "Why?" he cried out in pain. I responded by putting a round into the back of his head from my Glock. I exited the hospital, getting into the driver's seat of the gun truck. "Fox 1, this is Reaper 2. What's your status? Over." The attack pilot's voice cracked as I drove the truck back towards the roadblock. "Reaper 2, this is Fox 1. Hospital has been taken over by hostiles. Level the building," I yelled into the hand mic. "Fox 1, waiting for authentication phrase," the pilot responded. "Reaper 2, wildfire. I say again, wildfire. Out." "Roger that, Fox 1. A few seconds later, 2 Apache attack helicopters flew towards the hospital, unleashing their massive rockets and machine gun fire on the building. One of the guards at the roadblock halted the truck. "Where's the rest of the team?" I looked over at the file on the passenger seat. "I barely made it out. There were multiple hostile locals in the hospital." The guard stood silent for a moment. "Figured that's why the call went out. Did you get hurt?" he asked, shining the flashlight over me. "No, I don't think so." I checked myself over to ensure there were no holes or cracks. "All right, take the vehicle over to the right. We will get you cleaned up." I went through a decontamination shower and got changed. Shortly after, I received a phone call from my boss. "Did you get everything?" The voice, masked by a speech modulator, asked. "Yes, everything is taken care of. What's the next step?" I asked, throwing the patient file into a burn barrel. "We have another test about to start in Colorado. Get over there as soon as you can." I hung up the phone and boarded the helicopter that had originally dropped me off. "Where to?" the pilot asked. "Colorado." The work I do sounds evil, but it is necessary to ensure that things keep running smoothly. Every now and then, you will see it plastered all over the news. An outbreak of measles or a food contamination of some sort. Just know that it is not random. It's well planned and constructed to test the public's reactions and government response time and quality in case of an outbreak like the one in Arizona occurs. I'm an archaeologist, or rather, I'm an archaeology graduate. I completed my degree last year, and I've been trying to get onto a postgraduate course since then. It's a competitive field, with few positions open. I narrowly missed my chance last summer, and I've been working in a bank while I apply for more positions. I studied at an English university, specializing in Saxon settlement of Britain in the 6th century. Last month, one of my professors, who I'll call Sharon, emailed me. Somebody had found a possible new settlement. I won't say exactly where, but it's further west than any previously known Saxon village. She had been excavating for some time and needed help with the work. I was wary of leaving the bank at such short notice, but when she hinted that additional funding for the dig might lead to a postgrad position opening up, I stopped caring about my reference from the bank. So, the next morning, I was on a train with little more than warm clothes, a sleeping bag and a laptop. By lunchtime, I arrived at the station, and Sharon picked me up, and we headed out to the site. England is very heavily developed, and you're never more than a few kilometers from at least a small village, so the fact that we drove off-road in the jeep for nearly half an hour was quite remarkable. Apparently some scouts had been on a hiking trip and found a mostly buried wall. This sort of thing must happen all the time. But this time, They had mentioned it to their scoutmaster, who was a historian and took an interest, eventually leading to the university getting involved. By the time I got there, the excavation had been going on for a while. The outlines of several buildings were visible, and I estimated the settlement would have housed around 30 people. Sharon helped me set up my tent, and then gave me a tour of the site. There were 5 of us at the site in total. I had no specific job, but I suspected I was mainly going to be doing the physical work. Sharon had 20 years experience on me, and as the site lead, would be responsible for writing reports. The university was going through an efficiency drive, and she had to submit daily reports to justify the expense of the dig. Mark and Penny were undergrads, and Justin was an 18-year-old taking a gap year. So, as the second most senior person there, I was also in charge of documentation. We were a very young group, and only Sharon and I were taking any remuneration for the work. If we proved the site worthy of additional funding before Justin, Penny, and Mark had to go home, no doubt more experienced archaeologists would take their place. So I was very conscious that I had a limited time to prove myself. This was October, and by the time I had set myself up, the light was fading fast. But keen to get to grips with the site, I spent the last hour of daylight studying the layout, sketching, and making measurements. Given my knowledge of similar settlements, I made some predictions regarding the extent of the site and where we might find further buildings. Judging from the rest of the architecture, I figured the settlement might be post-Christian and estimated possible locations for a church. I spent the next 2 days looking for the church, and given the lack of funding, we had very limited equipment. But I'd been right about the location. On the 3rd day, I uncovered part of a stone wall, a strong indicator of a church, and got Justin and Penny to help me uncover the shape. It was 2 days later that I found it. Justin was off helping Sharon, and Mark was taking lunch, so I was working on my own, uncovering the floor of the church. As I slowly scraped the soil with my trowel, I saw a hint of orange. I pulled out my brush and carefully cleaned the area to find what looked like an orange thread buried in the ground at both ends. This concerned me, although at the time, not for the right reasons. Orange thread was far from anything I associated with the Saxons. I called Penny over, as I knew she had an interest in Saxon textiles. She agreed that this was unlike anything she'd seen before. Most likely, the site had been contaminated recently, but we couldn't be sure. So Penny and I brushed the area to reveal more. After an hour, we had uncovered a network of threads about half a meter across. They ran through the ground in an organic pattern, like fungal mycelia. One thread had been uncovered sufficiently for Penny to put her finger underneath and lift it up. Before I could stop her, the thread snapped. It quickly turned to dust, causing my nose to itch and Penny to sneeze. I reprimanded her for her carelessness, and we then agreed to cover it up. It was early evening, and we didn't want moisture to affect the area. Our limited budget hadn't even given us an excavation shelter, so we just put a sheet of polythene over the area and weighed it down with stones. Shannon knew more than we did about the likely provenance of the orange threads. She took some photos and told us to leave it undisturbed until some of her colleagues had a chance to review it. And with the sun setting and Sharon typing up her daily report, the rest of us had a couple of beers and settled in to sleep. I awoke around 6 the next morning to the sound of car engines. Pulling on my shoes and coat, I crawled out of the tent. Sharon and Mark were already up, watching 4 black SUVs pull up and park next to the camp. A man in a crisp black suit stepped out of the lead car and demanded curtly to speak to the project lead. He and Sharon walked off and began talking. I couldn't make out much, but I did hear Sharon raise her voice in argument a few times. The others were out of their tents now, and we spent about 15 minutes in wild conjecture until Sharon in the suit walked back. Sharon told us that the project was over and we needed to pack our tents and leave immediately. Of course we argued. This stick could make my career. And besides, Penny and I were very keen to learn more about the orange threads. There was no way these interlopers had the slightest clue about archaeology and would no doubt ruin the site if left alone with it. But in half an hour, we packed our things and were in our cars. During the whole time, nobody else stepped foot out of the black SUVs. We left, and Sharon gave me a lift back home. I was in a dark mood that evening. I hadn't pleased my line manager at the bank when I'd quit without notice, so doubted they'd take me back, and it looked like my chance for a PhD was gone. But in the morning, as I settled down to search for jobs, I got a phone call. Sharon wanted the 5 of us to continue working. We may have been kicked off the dig site, but they couldn't stop us reviewing what we'd found so far. So on Monday, I met Sharon, Mark and Penny in a cafeteria at the university. Justin had apparently made other plans. Between sketches, measurements, notes and photographs, we had actually gathered quite a lot of data, and it would take a couple of weeks to review it all. Sharon worked with Penny on mapping out the site in detail, and I worked with Mark on a literature review of comparable sites. But as the day wore on, I started to feel unaccountably wary of Mark. I'd got on with him very well at the site, but now he felt off somehow. The more I looked at him, the more I felt uncomfortable, as though being in the same room was dangerous, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The next day didn't ease my feelings. Something just seemed wrong. Not the creepy guy vibe I've got of some men, but more a sense that he was planning something nefarious. I confided in Penny over a coffee at lunch, and she confessed that she got a similar feeling from Sharon. By Wednesday, I was feeling a little under the weather, but able to go in. When the 4 of us met, Mark asked if I was okay. I wouldn't normally remark on this, but the way Mark said it, it felt very accusatory. Sharon said I could work from home. I glanced at Penny, who just shrugged. Were Mark and Sharon planning something? To be honest, Mark and Sharon looked worse than I felt. Pale perhaps, and their posture seemed vaguely threatening. I didn't want to leave them unsupervised, and insisted that it was fine to continue. Before settling down to work, I managed to catch Penny alone at the coffee machine. "Do I look okay to you?" I opened. "Yeah, a bit tired maybe? I don't. I thought they were out of order back there." "I don't trust them. Can you keep an eye on Sharon?" "Sure. Actually, I was going to say the same to you. See if Mark's acting weird. We can catch up at lunch." I found Mark in the spare office we were using, with the papers already out. As we got to work, I studied Mark, noting his expression and posture. Again, it was subtle, but there was definitely something not right. I caught his dark brown eyes, and for an instant, they seemed to flash orange. Then suddenly, he exploded. "What?" "What do you mean?" I replied calmly. "You've been staring at me all morning. Have you got something to say?" No, What could I say? I just... "Look, if you want to ask me out, just come out and say it." I was astonished. What did he think was going on? I had no idea what to do. We should just... I looked down at the papers. I started to collect the citations, but had barely listed them all when Mark said he was going to lunch. It couldn't have been 10 o'clock yet, but when I looked at my phone, it was 12:30. I glanced at Mark's work, and he'd done at least 3 hours worth of work. I'd felt a bit unwell, sure, But how had I lost 2 hours? Mark got up and left. I could have carried on, but Penny had agreed to meet for lunch, so I headed down to the cafeteria to find her sat down by herself. I grabbed a sandwich and water and joined her. "So," Penny started in a low, conspiratorial voice. "Anything to report?" I recounted the outburst, the strange conversation, the odd body language. I almost didn't mention the flash of orange I'd seen, or thought I'd seen in Mark's eyes. But when I did, Penny gasped. "I saw that too. In Mark? No, in Sharon." "Whoa, okay, that's weird. Any ideas?" "Well, I wasn't going to say it. I thought it was my imagination, but..." Penny leaned in closely and lowered her voice even more. "You remember the threats we found at the dig?" "Of course. They..." Suddenly, I realized what she meant. They were the same orange, weren't they? What does it mean? "I don't know," I replied. "But I've got an idea. Let's meet at 5. "No, I don't feel good staying here with Sharon. Tell her you've decided to go home after all, and I'll make up some excuse. Why don't we meet in my halls of residence? It's only 10 minutes from here." So Penny and I left the department early. Penny had a single room in her hall of residence, even smaller than my old one, and we cleared as much space as we could on her tiny desk. She offered me a coffee, but I didn't feel like one, and neither did she. The coffee that morning had tasted very bitter. So with a glass of water each and some notebooks, we started writing everything we knew. "What's cordyceps?" Penny had glanced over at my notes before I was ready to compare. I explained what I knew. "It's a fungus. It infects ants and controls their brain. It takes them somewhere more suitable for the fungus to grow and slowly eats them, converting their body into more of itself." Penny looked disgusted for a moment, and then realized what I was getting at. The orange threats from the dig site, that were most likely mycelia, had they infected Sharon and Mark? Penny opened her laptop and googled cordyceps. I'd got a few things wrong, but the basic principle was correct. "Do you think that's what it was?" "Well, no, not cordyceps. That only infects ants. But something like it. Something that can control humans would have to be more complex, I suppose." "Well, we both saw the orange in their eyes. The eyes are part of your brain, sort of. I guess it would explain their weird behavior, right?" We talked about this for a long time, bouncing theories off each other. Something that could infect the complex brain of a human. Well, it would have to be more sophisticated. The government agents that had closed down our dig site had arrived so quickly. They must have already known about the fungus. But not about that site, so there must be other sites. Could they be linked together? Operating as a neural network across the country? Even across the planet? An intelligent fungus, infecting hosts to achieve whatever their aims might be. We realized that the agents had arrived too late. I don't know why they didn't quarantine us, but we had no way of contacting them. We could have asked Sharon, but if she was far enough gone, she wouldn't help us. We had to do something ourselves. I don't remember whether it was myself or Penny who said it first, but we reluctantly agreed that it was the only option. We had to stop the infection from spreading. We sat up late into the night, planning our next steps, and I slept on Penny's floor. I'd gone homesick that day, so I would pretend to be ill and collect the equipment we needed, except for the car. Penny texted her brother asking to borrow his, saying she needed it for a university project. The next morning, I tried to persuade her not to, but she insisted that somebody needed to keep an eye on the disease's progression. She was right, of course. I spent the day gathering supplies. It would have been easier to wait for the car, but we had to move fast. I met Penny that afternoon, somewhat relieved that she was okay, and her brother dropped the car off. He wanted to stay and enjoy the university life for a night, but we had work to do. So Penny made some half-hearted excuse, and he took the last train home. We checked our equipment, went over the plan again, and for the second night, I slept on Penny's floor. The next day, we went to the university. I walked while Penny drove, so that we didn't arrive together and arouse suspicion. That morning was one of the most difficult few hours of my life, pretending to Mark that everything was normal. He looked different, twisted somehow, though nobody but Penny and I seemed to notice. Sharon was the same. We took Sharon and Mark out for lunch. We told them that we were so happy to be part of this project and that we wanted to repay them. Our treat, we said. Sharon protested, saying that it should be her to pay for all of us. But eventually, they agreed. I normally like Mexican food, but it tasted strangely sour, as though the ingredients had gone off somehow. But we weren't there for pleasure. Our plan was risky, but it worked. I won't explain what the drug was or how I obtained it, but I managed to slip it into Sharon's and Mark's food without them noticing. We kept them there, celebrating for an hour or so, long enough for the drug to take effect. By this time, Sharon and Mark were feeling ill, and Penny offered to drive them back to the department. She had left her car in the restaurant's car park, and we helped them into the back seat. I got into the passenger seat, and Penny started to drive. Of course, we weren't going back to the university. We drove about half an hour out of town, to an area of scrubland, far from any houses, and drove out of sight of the main road. Penny feigned concern and suggested to Sharon and Mark that they might want to get some fresh air. Eventually, they agreed, and we helped them out of the car. We then went back to the car, collecting the 2 hammers I'd bought the previous day. Drugged as they were, we still needed to take them by surprise. I struck Mark 3 times in the head, and Penny hit Sharon twice. That was enough to stop them moving. I don't know for sure if they were dead at this point, but we were sure there was no coming back from that. Penny covered the black seats with plastic sheeting, while I did my best to make sure their injuries weren't obvious. Then, we put them back in the car. Penny drove for 4 hours while I navigated, and as night started to fall, we arrived back at that cursed dig site. We had expected this to be the most difficult part of our plan, but the agents were nowhere to be seen. I had no idea why not, for all their apparent aggressiveness. Did they not realize precisely what they were dealing with? The alternative, that they themselves had become affected, was too terrible to contemplate. Still, it made our task far easier. We parked as close as we could and dragged the bodies the remaining 50 meters to lay them in the ruined church. If they were infected, then so was the ground, and we could at least contain the infection. Also, it was likely that nobody would encounter the bodies for months or perhaps years to come. And so, we left Sharon and Mark to rot in the infected soil and drove back. It was 4 in the morning when we arrived, and we went back to Penny's room. Our task was done. Or so we thought. We celebrated with a bottle of wine, but the wine had gone sour, so we abandoned it and went with water instead. At that point, it was Saturday morning. None of us were feeling great, and we spent most of the weekend in Penny's small bed watching Netflix. We decided to go in on Monday morning so as to not arouse suspicion and continue working on the archaeological write-up. Over the course of that day, we realized that we'd acted too late. Other people in the department had strange expressions or orange-tinted veins in their eyes. We went out for lunch, each having a salad and water, and our server looked infected as well. I don't understand why Penny and I are the only ones who can see it. Our task is clear now though. We've done it before. And we can do it again. We must do it again. We must cleanse the world of this fungus, killing the infected, and taking their bodies to that ancient Saxon church before it spreads beyond our control. If it hasn't already. Bright fluorescence blinded me as they yanked the back of my head, suddenly lighting up my world that had been dark for hours now. I was sat at a long conference table. The agents who had just taken the bag were withdrawing back to the wall behind me. At the other end of the long, heavy wooden table was an older man. "Sorry about the shady spy stuff. Can't have anyone knowing where we operate, you know." The older man chuckled. "Can I get you anything to drink? Coffee? Tea? Water?" My thoughts were racing. Anything about the past day wasn't making any damn sense. I was in my cell just a while ago, minding my own damn business, doing some reading. Then suddenly, the guards come in, throw a sack over my head, and we're on our way. Then this bastard is the one to greet me. "Where the hell am I, man?" I asked, unsure of what was going on. "Ah, sorry, introductions," he said, waving a hand. "Name's Ronald. I'm the kind of guy in charge in here. And you're Vincent. I've read your file. Great thief. Whistleblower for some really messed up stuff the Avarice Corporation was doing. Probably still is, but that's for another time. You've got a life sentence for trying to help people, am I right?" I blinked at him. "See, I think you shouldn't be punished for trying to help. Unfortunately though, I can only pull so many strings before the government is knocking at my door, so I need to have some help. You're going to help me, Vincent," he continued. "You ever wondered if we're alone in this world?" "I've hoped," I mumbled back. "Feels like there's going to be a hidden camera reveal any second. Some dumbass comedian coming out to tell me I've been pranked. No such luck." "Well, we're not. The only thing is that it's not really this world, but another one almost exactly like it. Thousands of them actually. Each one living out their own existence, unbothered by what's going on in ours," he said, motioning to someone outside the door behind him. A woman comes in holding a tray with 2 coffees, one of which she sets in front of me, the other in front of him. He nods in thanks before continuing. "Now, one of these worlds managed to make a huge breakthrough. Unfortunately, they were beset by some apocalyptic situations. Now, the breakthrough they've made is useless to them, but could end up changing everything if we could get a hold of it. Are you following me so far?" "So, what is it that they found out?" I asked. "Classified. We need your help to retrieve it though," he said, staring at me as he sipped his coffee. "If I don't know what it is, how the hell am I supposed to retrieve it?" I almost laughed here. Must have died in my sleep back in the prison. Maybe Avarice finally sent someone to make sure I stop talking about them forever. Jesus, if this is heaven, it's an absolute joke. "Oh, we'll give you all the information you need to find it, of course. We'll also be sending a team with you in order to get it. Highly trained personnel of our own, of course," he said. "Do you think we expect you to do this for free? We're willing to offer you quite a bit." "I'm listening." Might as well play along. He's going to offer me a pardon, freedom. Typical movie cliches, But he and I both know that as soon as I'm out, avarice is putting a bullet in my head. You get to die, he said now, making me almost spit out the sip of coffee I was going for. He laughed in response, raising a hand. In the public eye at least, we'll have you killed. While in prison, and you get a new identity, we're also willing to cover any living expenses you may incur and give a monthly stipend for your services for the rest of your life, so long as you let us keep an eye on you to ensure you're not oversharing with anyone. I took a moment, considering what he was saying. It wasn't like they were going to let me out anytime soon. And even if they did, it's not like avarice was going to let me just live my life in peace after all was said and done. A deep sigh was all I could manage. Fine. When do we leave? 2 hours. Do you want to eat first? We can get you anything you want. He replied, smiling and drumming on the table for a moment, before getting up. Can you guys let him loose? There's no reason to keep him locked up. Long as the food's free, I guess. I sighed. About 30 minutes later, someone came walking in with a tray. A huge double cheeseburger with pepper jack and onion rings loaded on it, and an order of rice, accompanied by a caramel milkshake sitting on it. Considering I didn't know what's about to happen, I'm going to take what I can get. The rest of the time passed quickly, but I finished my food and started to nervously pace before they came to collect me, providing new clothes and a backpack of some basic supplies I requested. Before I knew it, I was being marched through the dim lights of this facility, finally stopping in front of what appeared to be an empty doorway. 5 others were waiting, guns slung over their shoulders and combat gear on. Hey, shouldn't I get one of those too? I asked the guide who had brought me here. He only nodded, handing me a pistol. I looked at it, ejecting the magazine to make sure it was full before replacing it once more. That's it? They've got fucking assault rifles, dude. Let us handle the shooting, one of the guys said. He looked rough, a huge scar running down his forehead, through his eye and onto his left cheek. You just make sure we can get what we need. Still barely even know what the hell we need, I grumbled. Suddenly, a loud mechanical whirring began though, and the doorway in front of us was no longer empty. There was a faint purple light coming from it, with darkness beyond. Jump is open. Let's head in. You. Another of the soldiers was speaking, now pointing to me. He had a huge bushy beard and sunglasses over his eyes, but I could still feel him staring me down. Stay in the middle of us at all times. I nod, moving further towards the center of the group. Beard and Scarface moved in front of me, stepping through the doorway with a slight buzzing sound as they passed through the dim purple light. The other 3 lined up behind me, motioning me forward. Before I went through, the guide who brought me handed me an earpiece, motioning for me to put it in. Can you hear me? I say, settling the piece into my ear. All 5 of the others grunt acknowledgement. Now come through, I hear Beard say in my ear. Deep breaths. Moving through the doorway feels like I'm stepping through a field of static as it engulfs me. My breath catches for a moment, unsure of what I might be getting into. Then suddenly, I'm clear again. Beard and Scar are waiting there, the dark hallway engulfing them. As they each turn on a flashlight, I can see that this resembles the building we just came out of. The others follow behind me after a moment, stepping forward into the darkness and turning on their own lights. I fumble around in my bag, finally grabbing onto a small tactical beam of my own to light my way. We walked through the hallway briefly, darkness almost suffocating on every side. Beard finally raised a hand, motioning for everyone to stop where they were at the moment. We must have been near an exit, because sounds began to make their way towards us, and after a moment, the smell hit along with it. It was like the worst rot imaginable, everywhere all at once as it filled my nostrils and made my eyes water. I've gotten whiffs of some nasty shit in my lifetime, but this, God, it was like someone took a deep freezer of meat and put it out in the Florida sun for a week unplugged. It was almost painful to smell, and it was unavoidable. I searched deep in my bag, looking for anything I could rip up and stuff up my nostrils. Nothing I had asked for in prep was going to cover this though. God, what the fuck was it that could smell this bad from inside a building? Was it in here? Outside? Was that what we were supposed to be worried about while we're over here? Damn, Sims, your mom opened her legs again? One of the soldiers quipped at another, causing the rest to snort with laughter. Simmons, a younger guy with graying stubble, rolled his eyes in the dim light. Your mom ever shot hers, Pierce? Simmons shot back, making the others nearly lose it. I couldn't find the humor, considering how overpowering the smell was. Alright, Scar said, raising a hand. He put his back on the ground, pulling out a map. We were in a small city. Not sure what state, but the point Scar marked was right in the middle, surrounded by small outlines of other buildings. He traced a line down the street, turning right 3 blocks down, and continuing on for about 5 blocks, before marking another building with a massive X. We've got to make it 8 blocks total before we hit our target area. It's not likely to be a simple walk, so be ready to take care of any threats along the way. Now, I know all of you can smell that out there. That's what we need to be on our guard against. The hell is out there? I asked, looking each of them in the eyes in turn. At least tell me they gave all of you more information on what we were getting into. Fucking zombies, man. Simmons muttered. Seriously? Zombies? Some George Romero bullshit is what's waiting out there for us? I asked. When Ronald told me there was danger to the mission, I expected, I don't know, enemy soldiers or just booby trap buildings or something? Jesus. The goddamn Walking Dead, brother. Pierce mumbled back. Look, it sounds insane, but all the zombie rules apply here. Don't get bit, don't get scratched, aim for the hit, and whatever you do, don't get bit. Moment I see you take a chomp of one of these bastards, I'm putting a bullet in your head. Consider it mercy, Beard said, deadly serious as he went over the threat awaiting us. So what do we do once we reach the target building? Pierce asked the commander. Mr. Mills here, Scar pointed at me now, is going to get into the computer system for us. Place is still running on backup gens, so we'll have to force our way in through the system. Normally, I would say we just blow our way through with enough explosives, but, well, they have fail-safes on the lab area that would destroy what we're after if someone gets too close. We'll make sure you're not eaten while you get us in there. Once we're in though, we grab the target, duck out of the building, and hit here. Beard points to another X on the map, not far from the target destination. They'll have an extraction portal set up for us to jump right through. Let's make it out of this one alive and get home, understood? Sir. The others confirmed. I gave my own affirmation, slinging the pack back over my shoulder, hefting the gun in one hand and the flashlight in the other. We continued down the hallway, the sounds from outside growing louder now. Groans, moans, and the occasional scream split the air, telling me that nothing good was waiting for us out there. Beard opened the door, giving a signal for everyone to move, and we all filed out one by one, unsure of what would be waiting for us out there. The first thing I noticed was the light. It was dark out, not a star in sight, and only the occasional street light was still running to show the way. The sky above had an odd tint to it though, almost scarlet, like it was smeared with blood. Ominous clouds moved across occasionally, dark and looking like they were going to burst with crimson rain at the slightest provocation. Stay frosty, Scar mentioned as we turned, walking down the street. Buildings towered over us on each side, probably 10 floors at their tallest, and on occasion a scream of pain and terror would break out through the still night air. Somewhere in the distance, a fire was glowing, sending up smoke with a smell that would occasionally cut through the stench of rot that filled my nostrils. We moved in silence, the smell doing everything it could to choke us. Even when I wanted to open my mouth and say something, the stench forced its way in, settling on my tongue, making me gag within seconds. Before long, we had gone 1 block, with the rest of the way seeming like miles and miles before us. Hello? A voice came from an alleyway nearby as we passed. Help me, please. Don't even think about it, Beard whispered for the rest of us. We all froze, looking at the alleyway as something moved deep in the darkness. A trash can fell over, louder than thunder as it clattered to the pavement nearby. A small figure walked out, shadows obscuring their entire body as they neared us. Don't trust it. It could be someone living though, the 5th soldier mentioned. He didn't nearly look as battle-hardened as the others, and took a slight step towards the alleyway even as Beard was motioning for him to get the hell back. We have to help them, right? Step back, Scar muttered as he tried moving forward again. The shadowy figure coming towards us couldn't be older than a child, maybe 4 and 5 feet tall, thin and frail looking. As it stepped closer out of the alley, the shadows around it began to dissipate, moving towards the young soldier. I almost threw up right then and there on the street. It was definitely a kid. Or at least, it was at one time. Now though, it was something not quite dead, but not quite alive either. The skin was mottled, a sickly pale white with the same odd sheen as a dead body. That itself wouldn't have been so bad, but the real horror was the lower jaw and upper body. Its mouth was hanging wide open, but the lower jaw was split open at the chin, teeth inverting inward like pincers as the maw extended further down, opening into the thing's neck. Whatever bone it had in there now looked like jagged teeth. It stepped forward, taking the young soldier by surprise and falling on him, jagged teeth from the mouth down to his chest cavity suddenly emerging to tear into his skin. "So hungry," it moaned while taking a huge chunk out of the soldier. The rest of us froze in fear as it reared back, getting ready to take another huge bite as massive pincers emerged from the split as it opened up its chest, rib bones extending out to stab into the soldier's body. Before it was able to, there was a soft pop as Beard emptied around into the thing's forehead, leaving behind a crimson dot as it fell over, hopefully dead for real this time. "Fucking hell," Scar muttered, moving towards the young soldier still writhing on the ground. His neck was torn by one of the big pincers, so he couldn't force air through his windpipe for a scream. Just labored wheezing, desperate to try and live. Scar gave him one brief look before popping around into his head, ending his misery. "Sorry, kid." Screams rose up all around in response to the sounds of our skirmish, more of these things sensing a meal moving around in their turf. Within seconds, we could hear the sounds of rough footsteps, ragged breathing, and the occasional gurgling scream running towards us for their next meal. "There's a grocery store we can cut through right over there. Go, go!" Beard shouted, moving us all towards a supermarket on the corner, maybe a block ahead of where we needed to turn. Guess it was luck that the doors were unlocked. I stopped thinking we were lucky once we got inside. I don't know how long this place has been going to hell for, but it was long enough for everything left in this supermarket to become a health hazard. Dry goods and most of the stuff on the general shelves were okay, but the smell of rotting meat and produce was heavy in the air. Even worse, we couldn't go more than a few feet without an insane amount of flies buzzing all around, making it hard to breathe in the already thick stench of the rot. I zipped my jacket up all the way, sticking the collar over my face. The air was hot and heavier this way, but it was better than taking a ton of flies directly into my lungs as we walked. "We need to go through the back. There should be a loading dock that will let us out onto the next street," Pierce said, scanning the store with his flashlight. Empty registers still had items on them, abandoned midway through checkout. Only the occasional light was on, casting a dim glow over every fifth aisle or so as they flickered. I don't know what happened here, but the scene that was left only told us that it was gruesome. Puddles of blood lined the small aisle in front of the registers, smeared as whatever had left them behind must have gotten up to leave after being turned. Our footsteps echoed as we walked, the occasional squeak on the floor nearly making me jump out of my damn skin. After everything that I had just seen, I was ready to make my way back to the damn door we came through and spend the rest of my days in a cell. Fuck this. Shh. Beard raised a hand, motioning for all of us to stop right then and there. I could hear something moving now despite our stillness. Something else over the steady buzz of flies in the air. We moved our flashlights around, the bugs only making intense shadows across every aisle and wall inside as we tried to tell if we were alone. There was something scraping along, sliding on the ground with the occasional squeak as it went over puddles of blood on the floor. "The fuck is that?" Simmons whispered as we all shone our flashlights around, trying to tell what the hell was coming towards us. In moments, I had the answer. Coming from an aisle only a few feet to my right, something was crawling along the ground. Pale alabaster skin shining in the flashlight beam, red smeared on it from passing through puddles of blood. It wasn't just one of the things, but many fused together. It was like they got pushed in too close together and instead of just crushing each other, started to melt on a cellular level, dead flesh absorbing more and more of their peers. 3 heads looked at me, lifeless, gray eyes staring straight through my soul in the flashlight beam. Each one suddenly opened their mouth, split lower jaw, a white maw with sharp teeth clamoring out as if they were each alive looking for something new to devour, and let out a horrible scream. I don't know if their windpipes were fused together as well, but it was so discordant that it sounded like someone blowing on a bagpipe without any sense of knowing how to play. It chilled me down to my core as it started crawling faster. Masses of legs and arms fused at joints where they shouldn't be, rushing towards us in a mad frenzy. "Run!" Beard shouted, taking off towards the back of the store as we all rushed to follow. The mass of bodies let out another discordant scream as it gave chase, desperate to catch fresh prey. As we passed the meat coolers, full of flies, maggots, and rotten cuts of beef or pork, or whatever they had been. This thing burst through the aisles behind, gaining on us like a bat out of hell. I don't know how it was so fast when it looked like a mangled mass of limbs, but it was getting closer. Too close. "In here!" Pierce shouted, motioning to one of the swinging doors to the stockroom. We rushed through, Pierce holding the door open until everyone got in, and he let it swing back closed. It hit the abomination, causing it to let out a grunt of pain from every mouth. Before Pierce could follow behind us though, it pushed through, rearing back for only a moment as the door opened before shooting out a long spiked tongue that wrapped around his foot. "Pierce!" Simmons shouted, starting to go back for him before Scar grabbed his shoulder, turning him back. There was an emergency exit door ahead, our salvation to get out of this hellish place. We had to move though. Before any of us could do anything, Pierce looked back, nearly emptying his clip into the creature that still had a grasp on him. More long tongues shot out from the other mouths on it, wrapping around his body as their spikes stuck into his flesh. Before it was able to reel him in, he grabbed the pistol on his hip, putting the barrel to his head and pulling the trigger. His body went limp as the thing staggered forward, throwing itself on top of him and starting to devour his remains. "Come on, out here!" Beard shouted, opening the emergency door for the rest of us. As soon as we were through, he shot it back, grabbing a nearby dumpster and pulling it over the doorway, keeping that thing inside where it couldn't come after us. "Thought you said it was just fucking zombies." I shouted at him, falling back against the store wall. We were in a back alley, wider than the others, right next to a small loading dock where trucks could pull in. "That's not a fucking zombie, man." "I don't know what the hell that was. I'm going off the briefing they gave me," he responded, almost out of breath. "Doesn't matter though. We're here now. We can give Ronald an ass kicking when we get back, but we have to make it back first." The three of us left could only grumble in agreement. Scar and Simmons looked pissed, and I can't say I blamed them. When it comes down to it though, we only have one way out of here. "Fine, let's keep moving," Scar mumbled. We kept going, moving as quickly as possible through the alley and onto the street now, traversing the last few blocks toward the building that was our target. With any luck, we could get in and get out. When we finally made it, I could see that our target wasn't an ordinary building. 10 stories at least, with a big sign outside that said, Everrise Corporation. Motherfucker. Nobody told me these bastards would be here too. I mumbled, looking at the huge, heavy glass doors with no telling what was beyond. They've got their hands in everything, no matter what universe you're in, Beard mentioned, moving up to the doors and testing them. To our surprise, they gave almost immediately. No locks, no blockade, nothing. Seems a little convenient, I mumbled. So where do we need to go in here? Sub-level 3, Scar mentioned, moving in first, gun raised at the ready for anything that may be waiting. You gonna be able to get us in? I nodded. Depending on what's guarding it, shouldn't be an issue. Good, let's move, Beard said. Simmons led me into the building before following up the rear, keeping his gun up for anything that may come our way. At the other side of the lobby was a wall of elevators, though if they were running was a different question. A light flickered somewhere off to the right, leading down another hallway with a sign marking stairs somewhere along the way. We pushed the button on the elevators, but no light came. After waiting a moment, we realized we were going to have to take the long way. God damn, I hate stairs. Simmons grunted as we went along. The stairwell was curved and narrow, ensuring we had to go one at a time, single file, to descend. It was going to be cramped, and if anything attacked in here, we were more likely to hit each other with friendly fire than we were to hit whatever might be attacking. Run, don't fight. Beard nodded as we went down. Footsteps echoed loud on the smooth concrete as we descended, blinking red lights the only thing to illuminate our way. Somewhere far off, I could hear a scream from one of the creatures. Whether it was one singular, like we found first upon arrival, or one of the amalgamations though, I don't know. I hope it's the former. After a few minutes of walking, we finally made it to a door marked S3, our destination. When we entered, we could sense that there was something amiss. Glass was broken on the floor, with a red emergency light blinking in time with a blaring alarm somewhere deeper in. The main door was ripped from the hinges. A keypad next to it rendered useless. Guess I won't need to get us in, I muttered, somewhat relieved. I could hack systems back home, but God knows if they were going to be the same in this universe? Reality? Now that I think of it, I was sent in here with no guarantee that any of my knowledge would transfer over. Kind of shit planning on their part. We hit through the door, lights shining off all white walls, interrupted by the occasional glare of red from emergency lights on the ceiling. I started to grow uneasy when we passed by the unhinged door lying on the ground. There's no way something human could have done that. Even a damn truck wouldn't be able to tear that thing off and get it this far away from where it was supposed to be. Whatever it was, I'm hoping we don't end up running into it. Hallways twisted and turned as we followed them, trying to find the right door. Occasional windows into labs showed scenes of disarray, with test tubes and tables flipped and scattered all over the place. Every so often, there was a spray of blood dried on the wall, or a congealed puddle on the floor, but nothing inside that could have caused it. And here, Scar grunted, leading us into a small non-windowed room a little ways past the last lab. We went through what was once an airlock, moving into a small storage room full of freezers. As Beard rummaged through, looking through the various freezers for whatever we were after, I swear I heard a scream come from somewhere else in the building. Scar must have heard it too, because he moved back towards the door, motioning for Simmons to follow as they raised their guns, looking back at Beard. "Be quick, alright? Way ahead of you." He grunted back, pulling a vial from the back of one of the freezers. He set it down on the table, grabbing something out of his pack, a small case to put it in. As the vial snapped into the container, a loud roar echoed through the empty halls of the facility. "Ah, hell. What the fuck was that?" Simmons whispered. The roar came again. This one didn't sound like the others, the screams of the creature back in the supermarket. This sounded like a beast, a creature made to prey, announcing that we were finally in its hunting grounds. Whatever it is, this is probably where it was made. I muttered, moving past the others towards the door. "Not sure about you fellas, but it's not something I want to run into, especially if it's worse than what we've already seen." "Amen to that, brother," Beard said, putting the vial container back into his bag before following me out the door, hefting his own gun at his shoulder now. "Let's get the hell home, boys." We all started down the hallway, making our way back towards the stairs. The trip out of the facility was quiet. I honestly thought we were going to make it out without an issue, go down to the extraction point and be home free. I've gotta stop assuming these kind of things. Scar was on point, leading us up the stairs when the thing attacked. I don't even know how far away it was or, well, what the hell it was. All I know is that Scar was there 1 second, light shining forward and gun at the ready. The next moment, he's being hoisted up over us with huge tendrils of red piercing through him, lifting him up forcefully as they tore through his body. "Get out of here!" Scar shouted at us as we cocked at him. I felt Beard shove me from behind, moving me closer to the door. Whatever was holding onto Scar, it was further up on the stairs above. He desperately tried lifting his gun to fire at it, but before he could get a shot off, the tendrils looped back around, stabbing through his torso again before tearing him clean in half at the midsection. It tossed him down the middle of the stairwell as we ran past, the life draining from his eyes as he fell. We ran out of the stairwell and slammed the door shut behind, dropping over whatever we could find in front of it to block this thing from coming after us. Rushing to the front doors, we threw them open and walked out into the street, only to find that the sky above had opened up, pouring down rain that was now flooding the streets. "That's not helpful at all," Simmons said, looking both ways up and down the street. Our extraction point was a few buildings down to our left, right across the road. It doesn't look like we were going to be able to get there while staying dry though. Lightning suddenly flashed, illuminating the dark city around through the rain, with a loud boom of thunder following only seconds after. "Might work to our advantage," I said, noticing the smell of rot was much less intense now that the rain was covering it. With any luck, this could cover our movement. Maybe those things didn't like being out in the rain. Wishful thinking anyway. I pulled the pistol from my waistband, preparing for what may be ahead of us. "Alright, it's a yellow building we're looking for. It's an electronics store. Our extraction point is the door leading into their inventory room. They're going to open the portal there," Beard said, staring Simmons and I both down. "Head straight in. Hopefully portal is already open, but if not, we use that as base camp until it does. Whatever we do, we make it back home, damn it." We nodded in return, though I could tell that Simmons was on the same hopeless wavelength I was. Either way, we had to do what we could. Rain pounding the pavement around us, we headed out to the street, ready to make the run to safety. Talk about bad timing with this storm. The wind was howling, more lightning and thunder coming along with it. I was drenched to the bone within seconds after we stepped out, barely making it through the doorway before wind blew heavy rain right inside at us. Water flowed into the sewer grates all around us, already starting to flood the pipes below. Thunder struck at the same time as the window above us broke. Glass shattering everywhere and falling around us mingled with the rain. We kept running, barely taking a second to look back as something dropped to the street behind us, letting out a massive, angry roar. I was fortunate enough to look back right as lightning flashed. This thing was huge, at least 10 feet tall, and perched on all fours on the street as rain fell all around it. The thing was, well, I think it was human at one time. The features on the face appeared human-like, with clear eyes, a nose, and I can't necessarily say mouth because there were no lips of any kind. It looked like the skin just split, showing off hundreds of needle-like teeth lined and smiling. It was long and lithe, pale flesh shining as the rain dripped from it, totally bald with no clothes on either. It was on all fours, long lithe fingers holding it up while what appeared to be a tail and a huge stinger at the end curled up at the ready above it. I couldn't tell very well in the brief light that I had, but its eyes appeared a clear blue, and I could swear it was sniffing us out as the rain fell around us. I turned away, just willing my feet to pump harder against the pavement as I ran, desperate to get the hell away from whatever this damn thing was. Unfortunately, it seemed most of our luck had begun to run out. The thing behind us let out another roar, and from nearly every building all around, the undead began to pour out, not a care given to where they were jumping to, falling from windows and running out of doors with loud crashes that made the thunder seem like a murmur. Oh hell, I mumbled, desperately breathing to keep the oxygen flowing in my veins. Sitting in a cell for years now had me out of shape at this point, opting to rather read and sleep than work out in the prison yard. I was never much for exercise in the first place anyway. Now I was regretting that though, my lungs screaming as we ran. I could hear this thing behind us and look back against my better judgment. I thought the hordes of zombies falling to the street around us would keep it from getting too close too quickly, but it had the same idea. Instead of walking on the street, it was jumping over the tops of cars and onto the sides of buildings, sticking to them like a spider as it came closer to us. I was doing all I could to just dodge any of the undead now baring their teeth at us, barely able to keep up with what was happening as is. Before I knew what was happening, Simmons had shoved me out of the way as the big creature came down, the stinger tearing through his abdomen, where I had been only moments before. "Shit!" he shouted as blood gushed from his mouth. He held a hand over the wound, using his other to spray the creature with bullets. It pulled the stinger back, leaving a gaping hole in Simmons' midsection, before suddenly sprouting dozens of tendrils from its back. Simmons looked at me, mouthing for me to run as the tendrils stabbed into him, draining him of his life force. The creature gave another shriek, seemingly pleased with what it had done. I ran, putting my head down and staring at Beard's feet as we went, desperate to make it out of this fucking nightmare. Bodies splattered all around us as we continued to run, almost to our destination. As the rain picked up once more, I looked to the nearby buildings, trying to see if we had made it. A yellow building, huge sign reading Circuit Town on the side, was right there. Glass doors with a sign that said, "Come in, we're open," hanging down inviting us in. We desperately threw ourselves against it, forcing the door open the wrong way and breaking through the glass. We didn't have time to feel safe yet, as zombies began to stand and give chase, running after us through the broken door. Beard and I both popped shots off at them, desperate to get some distance before they were able to get their own bites in at us. Finally, Beard and I both scrambled to our feet, desperate to find some way to block them coming in. At this point, they were forcing past each other to get through, squeezing each other through the small space to get in here after us. We each grabbed the end of a shelf unit nearby, dragging it over to block off what we could and keep a barrier between us and the outside. It only lasted a moment before the zombies were the least of our problems again though, with the massive creature pushing through to come after us once more. Beard shrugged his pack off, tossing it over to me. I could only look at him as he hefted his gun towards the shelf that was keeping us safe. "The hell you doing, man?" I asked, stepping back, looking around desperately for the door. "You're going through first, kid. Just in case I don't make it, you can get the objective back home," he said, steeling himself and putting a finger on the trigger. He popped off 2 shots, dropping 2 of the zombies that were climbing over the barrier with well-placed shots to the forehead. "Now move!" I nodded, turning to look around. I headed towards the back of the store, past aisles of DVD players, televisions, radios and printers, searching for anything that could lead us back home. I finally saw it, a door set into the back wall. just in time as I heard the shelves guarding the front door suddenly go flying into the side wall, pushed aside by the creature as it started ducking through the broken doorway. "It's here! I see it!" I shouted to Beard. He popped off more shots, hitting the creature right in the forehead, but doing nothing to it. It absorbed the bullets like they were nothing. Not a good sign. As I neared the door, I sensed something wasn't right. It looked plain, and as I pushed on it, swinging the metal in on double-sided hinges, nothing happened. I didn't feel the electric charge, didn't emerge in my own dimension. Nothing. We were still here, in the electronics store surrounded by the undead and whatever this damn thing was. I turned, shouting again. "No good, portal isn't open." "Bastards." I heard Beard mutter under his breath before popping more shots off. He was doing everything to try and keep this thing at bay, realizing hit shots wouldn't work. He tried to take it out at the kneecaps, to no avail. It just kept inching towards us on all fours, like a giant cat stalking prey as it walked ever closer. The stinger over its back began to curl, brushing the rough tile on the ceiling as it popped, getting ready to make the stab at whichever of us looked easier. "Any backup ideas?" I asked. "Just hold out till they open that damn door." Beard grunted back. He fired again, center mass this time, but to no avail still. He pulled something off his belt, and it took me until he raised it to his mouth, biting off a pin to realize it was a grenade. He tossed it at the thing, pushing me backwards and slinging the door closed behind him. I barely had time to think before the boom rocked both of us, sending the door flying inward and knocking us both backwards. The thing roared, angry at the pain it must have caused. Despite the explosion though, I could still hear it coming closer as even more zombies poured in through the door behind it. "Come on, open the damn door!" he shouted, punching the air and struggling back to his feet. My ears were ringing from the blast, but I struggled to mine as well. I felt woozy, uneasy as the smell of rot began to pervade this place again. When the hell are they going to open up that door? We got what we came for, but we can't get it back home if they don't bring us back. Son of a bitch, I really don't want to die here. Suddenly, a purple light began to pulse from behind us, the other side of the small inventory room. Did we have the wrong door? Did they have to make a last-minute change? Either way, Beard and I shared a look, understanding that our extraction point had changed by at least a few feet. But there was our way out finally. We both started to run as the creature burst through the door behind us. I dove through first, landing almost face first on the ground on the other side. The pack landed beside me, clanking as the vial container inside rustled around. The smell of rot was finally gone though. Instead, the building was filled with the smell of dust and maybe some mold, though I was honestly thankful for it. "We fucking made it!" I laughed, pushing myself up off the ground and looking behind me. Beard was standing in front of the door, still looking back with his gun raised at it. "Shut it, now!" he shouted to the men around us. One moved over to a small console that was set up nearby, inputting commands that transmitted to small bars placed around the door. The deep purple electricity in the opening started to shut down. Beard began to lower his gun, a sigh escaping as we were nearly home free. The stinger of the creature darted right through the closing portal, stabbing right into Beard's chest as the portal fully shut down, severing it. Instead of dropping to the ground though, it hung limp from the soldier, one side severed and hanging while the other dangled out of his back. He gave a slight laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation. Son of a bitch. He collapsed, blood beginning to pool on the floor around him as his eyes closed. I started to get up, but could only fall back, looking at the dead body now in front of me. It must have hit a vital organ, because he wasn't even breathing anymore. The last hint of life just a long drawn-out rasp as the last air escaped his lungs. "Jesus Christ," I said, only staring at the body. I realized a moment later that I was still holding my pistol. As I began to stand up, getting ready to holster it and get the hell out of here, his body began to twitch again. Before I knew what was happening, he ceased, body arching up, almost breaking his back as he gasped in as much air as he could. It was raspy and coming out in short bursts. His face contorted in pain, a scream ripping from his lungs now as his lower jaw began to force itself apart at the midpoint of his chin. It split, leaving long sinew and teeth with no place to go as it continued down his neck, opening his entire upper body wide as it descended. The bones of his ribcage began to crack and distort, piercing through his skin as they turned to long, hooked teeth, ready to devour any of us if he could only reach. I don't know if it was exhaustion or respect for the man who got me through this nightmare ordeal, but I decided that it needed to be fast. Raising the pistol, I popped 2 shots in his head to be sure. Within moments, his body ceased seizing, falling back limp on the ground as the pool of blood began to grow, seeping further out on the smooth concrete floor. The agents with us didn't say anything, only offering to take my gun as one guided me through the doors back towards a waiting car that would take me back to their headquarters. Once I get there, they'll probably debrief me, ask me what happened to the rest of the team's end. I'll tell them about it all. Not much sense in keeping a secret about any of this anyway. Whatever is in this bag, whatever they sent us in there after, I hope it was worth it. I'm going to get my freedom now, but I don't think I'm ever going to be free of what happened over there. Whatever Avarice is doing here. Well, I'm glad it didn't turn into that. I must have barely scratched the surface when I blew the whistle. Guess it's time to start thinking about where I want to disappear to. Definitely not a big city. Not after all of that. Maybe the countryside. Maybe the mountains. Yeah, the mountains. Sound nice. Back in 2022, I went through a drawn-out and ill-tempered breakup with my then fiancée, Savannah. She'd been getting unusually close to one of her co-workers, and her behavior had suddenly shifted. I accidentally overheard one of her phone calls, revealing that the 2 of them were in fact having an affair. I confronted her about it, and she didn't bother to hide it anymore. This was about a week before we were supposed to go on a couples retreat that we'd planned for months. So instead of a 5-day weekend with my bride-to-be, it was aiming to be a miserable pity party. But hey, the deposit was non-refundable, and I needed space. I decided to go on my own while she packed her things. I couldn't bear to watch our life being put into boxes. I headed for Alaska. Now, one might not think of Alaska as the first place to go for a vacation, but there are some amazing ski resorts up there. There was this one place that had a little bit of everything. A main lodge with a bar, a restaurant, and a gym. Nothing huge, but more than expected. Savannah and I had rented one of the many 2-man cabins, complete with a built-in sauna. The thing cost an arm and a leg, but it came with complimentary champagne. So what the hell? I got there an early Thursday morning. I checked in and explained to the receptionist that there wasn't going to be a second person joining me. It earned me my first sympathetic look and an involuntary, "Oh." I was shown to my cabin. It was in a cluster with 6 other cabins, a straight walk from the ski lifts. One of the staffers showed me how to work the sauna, bucket and all, where to find linens, and how to order room service. Then they handed me the keys and sent me on my way. Savannah and I got the place a little cheaper because of how far in advance we booked, so we had no idea that it was going to be such a rough winter. There had been a constant overcast for about a week, and we'd booked a little earlier in the year than one should, meaning it was oppressively dark outside. Even at the height of noon, all I saw was a grey-washed sun peeking through layers of clouds like a shy schoolboy. There were a couple of others there though. In the cabin straight across from me were a pair of what can only be described as socialite hipsters. A man and a woman in identical haircuts and matching outfits. They had customized prints on their shoulders with their Instagram tags. At first, I thought it was some sort of joke, but every single time I saw them together, they seemed to enjoy themselves immensely. Kinda made me feel bad for thinking less of them, to be honest. There were 2 men in their 50s. They weren't an obvious couple at first look, but you could kinda fill in the blanks to draw your own conclusions. I think they just wanted to get away. They didn't even bring any skis. They seemed pretty chill, spending most of their time enjoying the amenities of the lodge. There was one final couple next door. a man and a woman in their early 40s. I got the impression that they were parents enjoying a weekend away from their kids. They talked on the phone a lot and had to repeat themselves, referring to your sister and your brother in a way that only a stern parent could. I caught their names as Tyler and Ginger. But out of everyone there, I think I was the one who stood out the most. This whole cluster was intended for couples, but the staff didn't have the heart to ask me to move. It was clear that something had gone wrong, and they just wanted to look after me. I got a complimentary breakfast, a couple extra chocolates on my pillow, and they always had this apologetic tone when speaking to me, like they were afraid that I'd break. To be fair, a couple of times, I did. That first day, I spent most of my time in bed. I wasn't even tired. I was just hurting from all the empty space and lack of noise. I kept going back to my socials to see if Savannah had posted anything. I kept updating over and over again. It was well over 7 p.m. when I realized I'd spent all day doing nothing but wallowing in misery. I decided that I was gonna at least try to make the best of it. I let the battery on my phone run out and left it empty while I headed for the bar. I didn't spend too much time or money, but just enough to get a chat in with some of the guests. There were single people and friend groups there too, but only about a handful. By chance, I ended up spending the evening with my next-door neighbors, Tyler and Ginger. They confirmed immediately that yes, they were indeed exhausted parents. I offered them a sympathetic mojito, and after that, we were best friends. Tyler was this enormous, lanky man, easily 6'6" and bald as an egg. Ginger, on the other hand, barely reached 5'4". You could tell she'd been stressed. It carried under her eyes. That didn't stop her from laughing herself silly at every stupid joke we made. It might have been the mojitos talking though. Later that night, I ended up taking a smoke break with Tyler out back. I hadn't smoked since college, but I figured now was as good a time as any to ruin my life a little. He handed me a lit Marlboro Red, leaning against the railing. I'd been telling Tyler and Ginger about Savannah and our recent breakup, and he was in full guy support mode. At least there's no kids involved. He sighed, sucking down his cigarette. It gets hella complicated, you know, and fast. But it's worth it, right? I asked. Tyler grimaced, bobbing his head side to side, making a little unsure hand gesture. Depends, he continued. I mean, they're gonna suck the life out of you. It's gonna be every day, all the time. There ain't no you anymore. It's us, you know. Yeah, I nodded. I get it. He finished his cigarette, flicking it into the snow. But you can see it. You can see yourself in another person. It's hard to explain, but it's like, that's you. And unless you really hate yourself, you can't help but to love him. So it's worth it then? Tyler snorted, heading back inside. He blew the last puff of his cigarettes out his nose. Or it might have just been hot air mixing with the cold night. I'm theirs. I stayed behind, looking over the dark snow. Nothing gleamed or glistened. It was like a frozen black ocean as far as the eye could see. Not a single star twinkling above. The entire resort felt like something lost in deep space, isolated and displaced. A monument to comfort in a subdued wilderness. I could see the others debating what song to put on for karaoke. They were gonna drag me up there eventually too. I didn't mind that much. I can do a decent Killer Queen. I turned back towards the endless snow a final time. And I swear, something glimmered. And it wasn't the snow. Eyes? I woke up close to noon the following day, the result of one too many drinks and not a single alarm set for the first time in years. I drank what felt like a bathtub's amount of seltzer, threw up, and grabbed some takeaway lunch from the restaurant. Got my wallet back too, not that I'd noticed ever losing it. As I headed out, one of the receptionists stopped me. She gently grabbed my arm, excusing herself. "Did you see a woman here last night?" she asked. About 5'7", dark eyes, blonde hair? No. Was she here with anyone? That's what I'm trying to figure out. She smiled. "We think there's an unregistered guest. She's not your missing +1, is she?" I shook my head, causing a temporary motion sickness. I reassured her that I hadn't seen anyone matching that description and promised to let her know if I did. It was strange. She seemed a lot more worried than I thought one might be about an uninvited guest. I took some time to actually go skiing that day. There's something mind-clearing about plummeting down the slopes without a care in the world. No one to break your stride. Free rein as far as the eye could see. I lost track of time and ended up spending a little longer than anticipated. That evening, I got to the restaurant just as they were about to close. I managed to sneak in an order for a plate of chicken carbonara, but I was the only guest left eating something. The others were at the tail end of dessert. That's when I heard some commotion from one of the other tables. Looking up, I could see the two men from the other couple's cabin. It was a proposal. The whole lodge erupted into cheers. Free drinks from the bar, hugs and kisses all around, and I was stuck sitting there with my plate of pasta. To round out the proposal, there was a short firework display outside. Blue and green rockets against the coal-black sky, lighting up the snow-like sand dunes of emerald and sapphire. It was beautiful, and I didn't even get a good look of it. As guests funneled back inside, I finished my plate. I was about to go congratulate the couple and join the budding party when I heard a knock. The restaurant staff were too busy closing up to notice it, but I saw someone outside. She couldn't have been older than maybe 20, 21? She wore a thin black nylon jacket and a trucker cap, resembling some kind of catering crew. She gave me a little hand wave, pointing to the door. "You mind letting me in?" "Sure, yeah." Strange. The glass door was already unlocked. I thought she might have been locked out. "Thanks." She smiled. "Must have pulled at it the wrong way. Sorry." She pushed past me, but turned with a smile as she did. Her eyes weren't just a dark brown. They were almost black. "You should join us." She smiled. "It's gonna be fun." She disappeared into the bar crowd. Her smile faded behind a blonde ponytail the second she thought I wasn't watching. It took me a moment to realize she matched the description of the woman the receptionist had been asking me about. I tried getting a hold of a staffer, but they were running about like headless chickens. After a short but valiant effort, I decided to celebrate with the others. After all, it was Friday night, and I needed a reason to drink. Or a better reason, at least. Things got a bit hazy around midnight. The newly betrothed were off in a corner, sharing a bottle of red. Tyler was trying his best to keep Ginger from a fifth cocktail. The hipster couple had retired early, choosing to spend the remainder of the night in their cabin. Other guests filtered out one by one, leaving a handful of people behind. As I stumbled back to my cabin for the night, intent on spending some time in the sauna, I noticed the strange blonde woman in the distance. She was standing outside the hipster's cabin, knocking on their door. She looked back at me with an expressionless face, her dark eyes looking like holes in the head. I could tell something was off about her. I always could, but I didn't know exactly what. I spent the night in the sauna, not by choice, but happenstance. I didn't even start it. I just put my head down on a towel and blacked out. By morning, I was so hungover. It was also the only time the sun decided to peek out, if only to tease my retinas. I spent some time getting ready, munching on a couple of protein bars and chugging a bottle of orange juice I'd nicked from the open bar. Just past lunch, I was the only one on my feet. I didn't spot any other guests from the cluster, and all the cabins were closed. No sign of the strange blonde woman either. Maybe that was for the best. But the more I wondered about, the more I noticed something was off. The ski lift wasn't working, and most of the main lodge was locked. All the lights were off, both inside and out. The restaurant's curtains were drawn, as well as at the bar and the reception. The gym was locked with a closed sign out front, I tried knocking, but no one opened. I tried the main lodge and the other cabins. Nothing. I looked all over the resort, but it was all empty. The parking lot, the maintenance shed, changing rooms, everything was either locked up tight or empty. Something must have happened. One of the side entrances leading to the restaurant kitchen was not just locked, but chained up. Going back to my cabin, I checked my phone, only to remember that I'd let the battery drain. There was no power to charge it. The temperature was also going down, fast. It didn't take long before I had to bundle up with a jacket, even indoors. By the time I realized I'd run out of options, the sun was already setting. I sat on my bed with my legs huddled up against my chest. Looking out the window, the snow had stopped glistening as the sun had, once again, wrapped itself with a cloud cover. That's when I realized what had bothered me about that strange woman the other night. There was no vapor coming from her breath. No hot mixing with cold. It was as if she hadn't breathed at all. By nightfall, I could see movement in the distance. Doors opening, lights turning on. There was laughter coming from the main lodge. A few remaining fireworks from the other night flaring up into the night sky. Someone had cranked up the music in the bar a little too loud. Heat was coming back, and power was restored. I fumbled for my phone, plugging in the charger. As I did, I spotted one of my neighbors through the window. One of the two older betrothed men. He looked ecstatic, skipping through the snow like a child. He lost his glasses as he haphazardly threw snow into the air, leaving an arc of snowflakes slowly tumbling back to the ground. I walked up to the window, ready to call on him. I wondered where his fiancée was. But I only had to wonder for a moment. His fiancée was dragging the hitless corpse of the hipster woman behind him. Colorful jacket and all. I crouched down, covering my mouth with my hands. I didn't want the scream to slip out. I could hear my chest pounding in my heart, making me twitch with every beat. I felt my cheeks flush as my tongue went dry. They dragged the body through the snow, their hands and faces covered in red. There was a long trail of blackened blood reaching all the way from the hipster cabin to the middle of the field. The two betrothed kissed, laughed, howled, and cheered. They waved at someone off in the distance, screaming with joy. And there was no vapor coming from either of them, no hot air mixing with cold. They were cold as ice, and just as pale. I saw it all from my bedroom window. Cleaners hanging bloodied linens out the windows like war banners. A woman throwing torn body parts off the roof of the main lodge. A gang of 4 restaurant workers set fire to the maintenance shed, dancing around it like shrieking primates. The receptionist, who talked to me earlier, was wandering in a circle out near the back entrance. She had knives stuck through her arms and throat, but was moving around like it was nothing. Her back straight and her movements precise. Predatory. There was a glow in her eyes, a reflection of the raging arson. The pity at once seen in them were long gone. I frantically dialed emergency services. As soon as the call connected, my mind went into a lockdown. I couldn't decide whether to scream or whisper, so I ended up doing this strange wheezing. I had to repeat what I said 3 times to even identify myself. I had no idea what I even stuttered after that, but I managed to give them an address. I think I got the point across. People were dead, and things were on fire. There was a knock on the door. My immediate reaction was to toss my phone halfway across the floor. I never hung up, I think. I figured whoever was outside might have heard the noise and came to investigate. "Would you mind letting me in?" The same voice as the other night. The blonde woman who I'd opened the door for at the restaurant. This time, I didn't move. I didn't answer. "I thought I checked this building," she chuckled. "Where have you been hiding?" There was a whisper. Someone was with her. Then, a giggle. "You slept in the sauna? No wonder we didn't see you." I looked for something to defend myself with. There was a fireplace, but it was only decorative. There wasn't even a fire poker. I grabbed my empty bottle of complimentary champagne. It was heavy enough to cause some damage. But as I looked at the closed door, all the fight ran out of me. There were so many of them out there. I counted 9 in total, surrounding the building. Dark shadows pressing up against the window, none of which were fogging up the glass. Not a single breath, not one. "It'll be quick." Her voice was muffled, but only barely. It would be so easy for them to break through. It was just glass. And yet, none of them did. "Open the door." Of course, I didn't. I grasped the bottle tighter, hoping against hope for them to just leave. Instead, there was another knock, a slap on the windows. A few familiar faces with an unfamiliar glow in their eyes looking my way. "I heard you went through a rough breakup," she sighed. "We're a community. There's no loneliness on this side of the door." Something in me snapped. It was one thing to hear someone talking, but now they were talking to me, specifically. Those words were meant for me, no one else. There was no way to trick myself into believing this wasn't happening. A reflex made me throw the bottle against the door, but it was useless. The bottle thumped against it and rolled away. They all erupted into laughter. A bloody handprint slapped against the window. Then another. Then an eager tongue licking it up like a thirsty cat. "All right," she laughed. "Then we'll make you come to us." The restaurant workers in the distance stepped up. They were using empty beer bottles from the other night, filled to the brim with a rag on top. Molotovs. I didn't have time to go for my phone, and I couldn't leave. The first place I could think of was the sauna. It was at least heat-resistant. It could buy me some time. I hurried into the sauna as the first heat wave pushed the door shut. Bottles were being thrown through the windows, shattering against the bedroom floor. They cheered, singing a scream rendition of London Bridge at the top of their lungs. Blood-curdling falsettos. 6 bottles, one by one, added to an inferno. The smoke was already billowing into the sauna, staining my lungs. There was no option left. I had to get out. I'd die if I didn't. I dipped my sauna towel in a bucket of water and wrapped it around my head. I tucked my arms into my jacket, covered my face, and considered my route. The shortest way was the window facing the rear, a sharp turn to the left, and then straight forward. I plotted it, I envisioned it, and as laughter drowned in the crackling flames, I felt my tears grow warm. And I ran. One step outside, and there was already something on me sizzling. Pain on my shoulders, like a searing sunburn. I could feel my skin flaking. I stepped down with my right foot, turned, and leaned into a sprint. It wasn't a conscious decision. I wasn't as much running as falling with purpose. And as I crashed through the window and air surged out around me, I threw myself into the snow by force of body weight alone. I didn't stop. Stopping meant death. Instead, I kept sprinting forward in a pace that knocked the breath in and out of my lungs like a piston. I threw the towel off my face, feeling the chill night air burn against my exposed shoulders. I was burned, but I couldn't stop to check how badly. Most of them were too busy howling and cheering to even care. Some of them were occupied with suckling on something raw and bloody. Others were too busy enjoying each other's company. Some of them were pointing my direction. One of them fired a gun, but the shot went wild. There was only one that remained focused and calculated. This wasn't a game to her. This was survival. I made my way around the side of the main lodge, following a blood-splattered trail in the snow. The ground was clustered with miscellaneous furniture thrown from the second-floor window. I could see breathless faces peering out at me, but they didn't seem to care. Maybe they thought I was one of them. Maybe they thought they'd already won. Maybe they had. As I rounded the corner to the parking lot, I saw a familiar face. Ginger. She was perched on the hood of a car in nothing but her underwear, barefoot, with the bloodied remains of Tyler splayed out in front of her. There were no tears in her eyes, just a blank-faced 1,000-yard stare. She was holding up his left leg, licking an open wound clean as she pressed and prodded the dead veins for blood to squirt. A crazy idea went through my head as I grabbed a handful of snow and stuck it into my mouth. I tried to calm my breathing as I stepped into her vision. Hiding my breath might trick her long enough to gain some distance. There was a visible confusion on her face, maybe a hint of recognition. The snow kept my breath from turning to mist, making me look just as breathless as the rest of them. Ginger looked me dead in the eye as her face contorted into a snarl. "He's mine! Mine!" she shrieked. "He's all mine!" She observed every step I took. She sucked air into her lungs as if to make herself look larger, making an uncanny reverse hissing noise. There was no vapor coming from her breath as she exhaled. There was no chase. She already had her meal, like a house cat eating a Saint Bernard. I had to get out of there. There had to be something I could do other than to run blind into the wilderness. By the south corner of the main lodge, there was a pile of cloves. They smelled of turpentine, but no one had lit them on fire just yet. Maybe they wanted to add more to it before they did. I stuck my hands in there, letting the chemicals sting my open wounds, rustling through discarded shirts and pants, some of which still had limbs attached. I managed to find a set of car keys. I held onto it for dear life, thanking whatever gods may be for the little blue sunflower keychain I'd felt at the top of my fingertips. The keys led me to a camper van. There was a small picture of the two betrothed men above the glove box. Since I'd seen them out in the field, I figured I had some time before they came looking for it. I put the keys in the ignition, and my heart froze. There was a knock on the driver's side door. This is hardly a fitting domicile. Her. I fumbled the keys, trying to get the thing to start. The camper van was probably older than me, and I'm not good with driving stick, but I didn't have much choice. Invite me. That's just it, isn't it? I cried. You can't do it. You can't come in. You wanna bet? Yeah, I nodded. Yeah, let's bet. Let's do it. I was just buying time. The moment the engine roared to life, I stepped on the gas. The bloodied hand squeaked against the window as I took a hard right turn, making the tire slip on the graveled road. I saw it all in the rearview mirror. The fires and the gathering crowd. Some of them waved goodbye. Some cheered. All of them rejoiced. Together. Breathless. By the time I got to a nearby town, fire trucks had already passed me by. Once I talked to the police, they seemed to already know the story. To them, there had been reports of arson, several casualties, about 8 in total. They had people on site investigating, but the people I'd seen out there, celebrating a massacre, they were never reported as victims or suspects. In fact, they were seemingly just innocent bystanders. I have kept my eye on this for years. Some of the firemen who got to the resort that night have permanently switched to night shifts. Most of those who survived that night have mysteriously vanished from social media, but they still pop up in posts, very much alive and kicking. I've seen people who look suspiciously similar to Ginger and the two betrothed men. They didn't fake their deaths or disappear. They just made themselves socially invisible, slipped into the background. All deaths were easily explained. Arson. All they found were burnt bodies, and the fire marshal in charge seemed less than eager to delve deeper into the causes. Most of the eyewitness accounts were taken on face value. Strange how the fire marshal first changed to a night shift, then fell off the radar completely. It was arson. End of story. No need to look closer. In my 911 call, no one ever heard about it. No wonder they didn't bother to hide it all from me. I was never a threat. They had already done what they came for. That one woman, the one who didn't breathe, was the source of it all. And to the best of my knowledge, she is still out there. And she is not alone.